So I'll go ahead and get started then. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending this webinar here. Sofar Sounds presenting the era that we're in, COVID-19, during the time of COVID-19, and we're excited for a really well-rounded discussion here today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Billy Walsh, and I'm the Artist Community Manager for Sofar Sounds, and I get to be the host of this afternoon's event, which is wonderful and a long time coming. Been really excited about it for a while. So it's been a really hard shift for everybody here, I think especially in the entertainment and music industry. Amidst COVID-19, I know it's had a pretty devastating effect on artist communities. So the one thing that myself and my teammates at Sofar were really thinking about trying to present to creators is, something along the lines that can help them learn about new ways to engage with their fans, new ways to continue performing, and to just make sure that that momentum isn't lost on people, even though that they're stuck inside right now and we can't hit the road and tour and perform like we're all so very used to doing. I'm an artist myself, and it is really difficult not getting a chance to perform live like we're used to, but that's why we've brought together this panel of experts in the field of streaming, artistry, and production to talk a little bit about live streaming and how we can go approaching it from beginner to advanced. So really excited to introduce today's panel. Ahead of time, I'll just run over really quickly how this will run before I give introductions to these fine folks here. So I wanted to first thank everybody for submitting questions ahead of time. The questionnaire that we got had a ton of really great content that we were able to build an interview with our three panelists ahead of time. They have these questions and we're well prepared to have a really nice, well-rounded discussion covering a number of topics around live streaming. But afterwards, we'll leave about 20 minutes or so for live Q&A. What you might see there at the bottom is the little Q&A button in your Zoom chat. What that allows you to do is submit questions live, and Matt Brooks, the regional director of full-time cities here at Sofar Sounds, is helping out with moderation today. So he'll be assisting me as I host the night and run through the questions to make sure that we're covering as many questions as we can at the end. You'll only be able to see your questions to start, and once we select and answer those questions based on priority, based on what's already been covered, and based on what's coming in, once we answer those questions, you will be able to see them live. So don't be discouraged if you're not seeing a ton of questions coming in. Please feel free to submit questions at any time. Like I said, Matt's there to moderate and make sure that he's catching any questions that we'll want to answer at the end during the live Q&A portion. But otherwise, yeah, just feel free to speak up into the chat too if you're noticing anything in terms of audio or video issues. But I do think everybody is in and has the ability to see us all here. And then, yeah, Matt had actually pointed out too that we have a chat function as well for us to communicate with the panelists as well as the panelists and attendees. But without further ado, I'll stop gabbing and I'll introduce our panelists today. So first, we have Nate Maingard joining us from a farm just outside of Cape Town, South Africa. Nate Hi, Nate. Nate describes himself as bringing a transcendent folk aesthetic of irresistible hooks, uplifting enlightenment and shamanistic energy. He's a modern troubadour sharing heart songs and soul stories which travel and invite you on a boldly vulnerable journey. He's all around, he's a very kind, wonderful human being and talented musician. He spent a lot of time building a following on applications like Periscope, YouTube. Has done a lot of live streaming, and commonly, as I've seen, has a bunch of followers that he calls natives that actually sign in and experience some of his live streams through Patreon exclusively for his fans. So he's got a lot of experience there, just connecting with a community of people that are tuning into his streams. Next, we have Shinova here with the purple lighting and the beautiful piano. She's an award-winning alternative pop artist and songwriter, performing gutsy anthems that encourage her fans, the Weirdo Crew, similar to Nate's Natives. She has the Weirdo Crew, to own their uniqueness. Nova just came off a solo US tour that included many Sofar Sounds events. We're really happy to have her really across the country playing our gigs, and actually ended her tour just a few days before lockdown. So she got in there just at the right time. But she was performing originals acoustically on piano and guitar. She's an independent artist that has become known for her live music streams through Twitch. And she's showcasing her performance skills as well as sharing a behind the scenes look at her creative process through her Twitch streams, and has quite a following on Twitch. I'm really excited to learn more about the ins and outs of using Twitch to stream. Finally here, we have good friend and wonderful human being, Matthew Santiago. Matt here got his start in live production in 2007. Some of you may remember punkrockvids.com, where he created and managed the Boston team. And he spent his last 6 years at Spotify working on a variety of programs that focused on connecting artists and listeners in different live settings, such as Fans First. But now we're lucky enough to have Matt, having joined Sofar at the beginning of March as the director of production, to help standardize Sofar's live and post-production needs, including a new live streaming platform we just rolled out called Keep Listening. Really excited about that, and excited to have you all here. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, we're
cool.
Here.
Yeah, thanks for being
We're here. We made it. Awesome.
Yes.
Really happy to have you. And yeah, like I said, we've got some content that was submitted from some of the attendees right now that I'll go ahead and get started with. And I think a question on a lot of our minds, and I'd love to get your all opinion on it. So we can go one by one. Feel free to chime in, and we'll just balance things out as we go. But my first question for you all, and for no one in particular to start, but if anyone's feeling inspired to answer right away, feel free to jump in. The question is, right now, how do you see streaming culture impacting the lives and the music, our lives and the music industry post COVID-19? We're in a really weird time right now where streaming is technically at the forefront. And given your experience, how do you see this impacting us as we move forward and get back to our normal lives at some point?
I'm always going to have an answer and want to jump right in. So I don't want to always take that position. So anybody?
Jump.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to lead.
Well, honestly, this hasn't changed much for me, my lifestyle. Besides being on tour, that's like a totally separate thing. But the rest of my life is at home behind my computer for the most part. Writing, producing, streaming, just general business running, my business as an entrepreneur in music. So I'm kind of used to being home. However, I know a lot of people aren't. And I do think that there is going to be a shift, as obviously we're now forced into this, but continuing on into more at-home type environments that we can now share with our fan bases. I know there's been a lot of famous people, like Miley Cyrus has been streaming on Instagram a lot lately. Diplo's been on Twitch, and it's like we're getting to see these people in a new, more personal light that I think isn't going to be able to go away easily, because now we get to see something we haven't before.
Yeah, I think for me, live streaming has always been the closest thing I've found to playing a live show. And in my case, particularly a house concert, an intimate show, because that's my favorite way to play. And so it's like, now that's really in the limelight. And I think more people are going to switch on and realize that that is an option. What I'm hoping for, but I don't know how it's going to pan out, is that people are also going to realize how important artists are and how important live music is and how much they miss it, and how, like, for me, I'm speaking for myself, live streaming is still a distant second to actually being in a room with people and having that like incredible, unique experience that only happens in that moment. And so my hope would be that we'll have people really waking up to going like, we want more of that. So let's facilitate our artists coming into our homes or coming to these venues and like supporting that. And then being able to use both together, as, because it's fantastic being able to live stream from my house and not have to be forced to constantly be on the circuit. And it's an incredible gift. So I hope that there's now more opportunity to do that as more people have woken up to live streaming.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to jump off what Nate's saying. I mean, live streaming and its capabilities have been around for a while. People have had the abilities to do this, but I think right now is a really interesting moment because of the focus it's having. I think the way that people are experimenting with the format, really testing it, the attention it's getting is, attention that it hasn't had before. So I think we're going to, in the next couple months, see some really interesting things that come out of this. And from my standpoint, I'm really curious to see what this does to audiences specifically, because I think the coolest thing about live streaming is giving this intimate access to an audience. And, you know, with people being stuck at home for a little while, being trained that artists of all sizes can open up their homes and get that intimate access. I'm really curious to see what that does in a live setting. I think it makes more intimate shows, closer feeling things that much more appealing. At least that's my hope.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. So with that, I think a lot of us have noticed that live streaming is becoming more and more saturated as we're all stuck at home with our laptop computers and nothing to do but play to the camera sitting in front of us. So we're all trying it out. And I'm hoping to just get a little bit more into the audiovisual aspects of live streaming, especially for people like myself, where I've tried live streaming my music a few times and it's really difficult to guarantee that you're getting the right sound, you're getting the right aesthetic, you're getting through to people. And, you know, I think that really matters to the connection that you're trying to foster with people online, and finding new fans as well has to be a high quality product, or at least the best to your ability. So I'm wondering, you know, in your experience, either with the production of these live streams or playing them, what best practices do you recommend for artists looking to get the most out of their live streaming experience, keeping in mind that some may be starting for the first time?
I'll take this one as a little starter, just because I feel like I'm on the very basic end of it, and I've tried to do the more advanced, like, so for example, Twitch and using third-party things and lots of big mic setups and all that kind of stuff. I've done that in the past. It's been okay, but what I've found is that literally using my phone and something like Periscope or Facebook Live or now Instagram Live, or just going directly live, is an incredibly effective way of doing it. So I really want to encourage people who are like, oh, but I can't afford all these new microphones, or I don't know how to set up all the stuff. It's okay to start really simple, and then to maybe find your way into the more complex stuff as you go. And I know that the more complicated setups, I personally love it, being a techie kind of person, but I found that with what I'm doing, so like I'm an acoustic musician, just playing my guitar and singing songs and telling stories, and it's very direct, it's very relatable. And I find that the relationship, it just really works for the people who are enjoying my music, for my community. And I've often thought, I've had that exact thought of like, this is too simple. I can't just go live from my phone. Like, I need a better mic. I need it to sound and look the best it can. And my audience is like, just go live on Periscope. We love it. It's fantastic. That's what people want. That's what they love. And there's several other artists I know, like Claire Means and Dawn Beyer, who just literally go from their phones, and they've built massive audiences. They make really good income from it. They've toured based on that. And so just know that staying simple and staying very just ground level is actually okay as well. And now I'll pass it on to those who probably have a little more technical for you.
I love your answer. I just made a video on this on YouTube about how to start live streaming. And I just go on and on about how the technical side of it is so challenging. It took me a good 6 or 7 months to get a high quality stream at the level in which, you know, a good PC that's not going to crash, and like microphones and all that stuff that you're talking about. And I shared my basic starter kit of what that looks like on a desktop. But I mentioned in my video that, yeah, pull out your phone, and there's some really good apps that can get you started right away. Because I think the point of not streaming to the point of your live needs to be as small and the least resistance as possible, because what you're saying is so true. Like, people are just going to get frustrated, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I did want to work up to having a more advanced setup, but it was a full-time job for many months to get it right. And that's not for everybody. So I think the mobile thing is a great tip. There's some great apps. I use Prism. I randomly found it. You can literally stream to just about any host, and that one's been great for me.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to emphasize what everyone else is saying. It's just honestly such an overwhelming world, and the baseline that a lot of people just have in accessibility, I think, isn't really considered. I mean, everyone with a phone can start testing this out. You don't need additional devices. And the piece is, every time you add additional devices, it does add that tax of reading the manual, truly, especially when it comes to, you know, frame rates, encoders, matching all this stuff up. You know, I'm sure we've all gone down crazy YouTube rabbit holes where we're like, why doesn't this work with my setup? And, you know, the resources are just becoming more and more readily available, but you can still easily spend so much time getting lost in the gear that you forget about your performance. And that performance is truly the most important part. It's what people are tuning into. You could have like the best cameras and microphones in the world, but it doesn't save a lame performance. You could also have a great performance that is just using your phone and camera. That is still a great fucking performance. So, I mean, you know, it's working with what you have. And if you have means that you can, hey, you know, I've been using the phone for a while, I feel this is capable, maybe look at a next step as a mic and slowly add on to your setup rather than being like, you know what, we got to build a studio tomorrow. I'm investing 10 grand, let's go.
So working with what you have, yeah, taking things as they come. And I think, you know, trial and error is probably one of the biggest learning just from everything that you all just shared. You know, trial and error is probably key to that. And Nova, you talked a little bit about Prism and how that, you know, gives you access to more channels. But just a quick one here. I'm curious, with so many options for streaming these days, I think people can feel a little overwhelmed as to where they go. I know the people that initially submitted questions, we had a little poll there around what streaming services you typically use. And more popular than not, it was Facebook and Instagram. But we know that, you know, Nate is using Periscope and YouTube at times, Patreon. Nova, you're an expert with Twitch at this point. And Matt, I'm sure you've had your fair share of, you know, all different kinds of platforms that you've been using. So what ones stand out to you as your favorite platforms to use for live streaming, and why is that?
Is this me? Okay. So yeah, I've become a Twitch girl. I love Twitch. I think there's a beautiful, growing, at the beginning cusp of a music community that is just amazing people and a highly retentive audience, very attentive, and they stay. Very geeky, smart, introverted people live there and appreciate artists a lot. That's why I went on tour, was because of them, and they're all over the world. So someone was kind of asking in the chat about, you know, building an audience. And I think you can do that anywhere. However, I feel Twitch has been a really great community for me specifically. I say Instagram is great if you already have a following. I do some chatting streams and some acoustic just on my phone type streams there. I haven't gotten into YouTube. I feel the chats and the resources and some of their features are a little bit more like still in beta vibes, at least for me. But if you have an audience there, I say go where your audience is and cater to who they are and what appeals to them. And if you haven't started live streaming yet and you don't know who that is, I say experiment and see, like, all right, I'm going to go on Facebook Live today, see who shows up. All right, I'm going to go on IG Live. Let's see who shows up, you know, and then you'll find your audience that way and who's willing to create an account where.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it comes down to what you're using because there's going to be limitations with devices and things like that. So if you're doing a mobile only approach, you know, IG and Facebook are great ways to just get started without gates. You know, getting started with YouTube for streaming. I think to be on mobile, you need at least 1,000 followers. Someone can correct me if I'm slightly off there. But you can do it from desktop regardless. There's still just a 24-hour gate window for you to authenticate your account and then make sure you don't have things like copyright strikes or anything like that that can also come to play. So, you know, understanding, you know, your devices and what you have, I think is super helpful. There's a lot of great open source software right now. And I'd say one that I keep hearing more often than not, see constantly, is OBS. It has a lot of really great tools in it and then a bunch of wonderful hooks that it can be somewhat platform agnostic. So whether you're on Twitch or YouTube, if you're working with remote teams, you know, there's some benefits there. So, you know, that's completely free software and it's a way to, you know, get started in experimenting things as well.
I'm going to jump in really fast, Nathan. Just to clarify, I think for a noob who's listening to all of this, wants to understand what the difference between a platform and like the host thing is, because we've talked about a couple apps and a couple different applications or desktop things. OBS is a application software that basically takes your video audio to the host, the platform, the site. So that's also the Prism app that I was mentioning. That's actually not a platform. That's a middleman that takes you to then whichever platform you want. So just to clarify, as we talk, those are two different things.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. It's as soon as you start looking at OBS or Ecamm Live or Prism or one of these, you're adding in one step that can be slightly more complicated, but then can also give you so much more control in the long term. And then you can go onto any other platforms, but you've still, you're set up there within OBS or whatever you choose to use. I think I really would just echo, I think Shinova mentioned it several times, where your audience is, start there. So for example, Periscope is owned and run by Twitter. That's where most of my audience is. And that's where I go live most of the time, because if they follow me on Twitter, by default, they'll follow me on Periscope. And you can also see it, like if someone's scrolling Twitter at the top, it's showing who's live right now. And so it just kind of integrates really well. And so if I were to start right now and I wasn't worried about like where my audience is or things like that, I would, and I was keeping it very simple, I would probably say Instagram. Just because Instagram is really one of the biggest platforms. It's so huge and everyone's on it. And I know that in some ways, Facebook has generally a bit of an older user base at this point. I'm not sure about Twitter, but I know that Instagram is just like everybody's there. And so if you have any kind of a following there and you're wanting to just start somewhere, not have to think about it, I would say Instagram is a great place to start. Otherwise, I do think that if you're wanting to go a little more advanced, then OBS is an amazing option. And going with, I love the idea of Twitch. I've tried it a few times, but because I'm already so established on Periscope, I've always found it hard to like go live to just 3 people. And then, anyway, but that's another story. So
I had to build from the ground up. I had my whole like first couple weeks of like 5 to 10 viewers, but it does build over time because you are in the category. I want to try Periscope now. I didn't know that they were on by Twitter. That's cool.
It's awesome. Thank you all for sharing that, I think. And thank you, Shinova, for the clarification too. It's really important to be able to understand the ins and outs of what kind of products and platforms and services you're working with. So I actually, I'm gonna jump ahead to a bit of Q&A right now, just because a question came in that's really related to the next question I was going to ask anyway. So the question, I'll kind of blend the two of them together. I wanna know, talking a little bit more about growing your fan base and engaging with those fans. You may start like what Nova just said with 5 to 10 streamers watching you, but that will grow over time. And of course, those people will be chiming in. They might be chatting. I know Instagram has this function, Twitch, Facebook, really anywhere that you'll be streaming has the ability for people to chime in and make requests or make comments or ask questions. And so Kara Goldsmith, one of the attendees today, submitted a question. Thank you, Kara, for submitting. She asks, on Instagram Live, for example, how do you balance responding to fans with playing the music? Have you found that Q&A breaks work well to feel connected? And in that same regard, how are you kind of balancing the music and the performance with the connection with fans to create a cohesive experience there for you and your audience?
I'm gonna jump on this one. This is like, I'm so interested to hear what anyone else has to say about this as well. Because so for me, live streaming has actually changed the way that I play live shows. And because most of the live shows I play are house concerts, so they're intimate shows with like 20 to 50 people. It's very, and what I've discovered is that I love the experience in live streaming. It's different to a live show because I can, if someone says something that's really hilarious or really cool or really relates to the song, I can halfway through just start speaking to it if I want to. Like sometimes I'm deep in a song and I just want to stay with it and then I can do that. But there's been this incredible ability to kind of just free flow in a way that I never did when I played a live gig before, and it's actually allowed me in some ways when I do play a live show that I invite more audience interaction, generally between songs, but also sometimes there's something that comes up while I think of something and I'm just like, I'll just go into that flow, and it's really freed me up. So for me, I find that what I love and what it seems that my audience really loves about live streaming is the ability to interact in interesting and personal and intimate ways. So being able to go down like thought paths that we weren't expecting to go down, being able to freestyle a song that just because someone said something cool and I just want to sing something about that, or there's like all these ways to I think I've done podcast recording on live streams before, and then that works really well to be like, hey, everyone, welcome. We're going to do the podcast, and then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. And then that kind of gives structure to the live stream and allows, because it would just be too confusing otherwise. But for myself personally, the interactive part, like between songs, not just jumping from song to song to song, but like playing a song and then having whatever people are saying, responding to them. Hey, well, I'm so glad you like that part of it, or that's really cool, or like, what did you guys think about that line? Or there's like so much freedom to just interact, actually have a really powerful interaction that almost wouldn't be possible, or definitely wouldn't be possible if you have a big audience. Say like you had a live show with 100 people, you couldn't do that. Like it just wouldn't be, you wouldn't have that flexibility. So for me, that interaction is such a critical part of what makes live streaming awesome and what people love about watching live streams.
I just could not agree more. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, live streaming has changed how I play shows. And the first thing that I realized when I started streaming, I must say, is live streaming is a whole different beast than live performance. Like I did my first live stream like I would have done a show, and it was so awkward and so weird. You don't say, put your hands up. You don't say, all right, I want to hear you. Like, it's just awkward. Like it's just a little different. And I think this plays a little bit to what you mentioned, Billy, too, in our briefing that you sent. Oh crap, I lost what I was gonna say. You said, oh my gosh, I just lost all my train of thought. Sorry about that.
That's okay. You were talking about
I'm ADHD, so
trying out playing a first live stream like a live show, how awkward that can be, how you can't tell people to clap and raise their hands. And
yeah, wow, that's not happened in a while that badly. Sorry. I don't know what I was gonna say. You mentioned something and it was kind of related. But anyways, Matt, how about you go ahead? You respond.
Yeah, no, all good. You know, I think the advice that you both provide is definitely more relevant, you know, being in front of the cam than me behind. What I can say though is I fully agree with the sentiment from like the audience perspective. You know, I think what makes this format different than anyone tuning into something that is pre-recorded is that engagement element. You know, watching these for, you know, different artists, whenever you see them kind of break that wall and respond to a comment that you thought was funny and you can also relate to, or whether it's, you know, super intimate and you see your friend also chatting there too and going back and forth. I mean, that's what makes this format unique. Otherwise, people can just watch live performance videos. So I think, you know, it's leaning into what the format brings to the table to, you know, how it can elevate your performance.
I'm sorry. I'm so mad at myself. My brain just left, but I'm here now. About audience's energy and not having that. And I think this kind of ties in because you have to be in your own world. You have to create your own space and share that. Then people are invited into your space, I feel, because there does have to be a baseline of energy that only you create. You're not feeding off of anybody. And I remember feeling very self-conscious when I first started streaming, feeling like, oh, nobody likes this. Oh no, like it's one viewer less than it was before I did that, and like overthinking everything. And it's just not that way at all. You have to create this baseline energy of just who you are and what your world is, talking in between, like you're saying, and relying off a chat. But when you start, you might not even have people in chat. So you got to be you. And I think one of the tips that I have and where I started was sharing the process and my thinking behind things. And I realized people love to hear about, oh, whoa, that's what she's thinking when she's doing that, or that's what, you know, that's why she made that goofy face in the middle of that song. Like, you know, you can just be totally transparent and candid. And I feel live streaming has given me room to show more of who I am than anywhere else in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
so one
just
thing
before,
oh, go ahead.
Before we go on, I mean, we may cover this later anyway, but it's on my mind now, is that exactly what you're saying about when no one's there, that feeling of, and even sometimes for me, when it starts off, the comments aren't really flowing, like people are there, but they're kind of just checking it out. They're not sure, like that is such a moment to just let the flow continue. And not, so for example, sometimes I'll be like, hey, what do you got? What should I play? Like, what song do you want to hear now? And like crickets. And also because it's a live stream and sometimes there'll be a delay. So I don't want to sit there just, what do you want to hear? And then just sit there quietly waiting. So it's like, what do you want to hear? And then, oh, and I was thinking about this thing that day, you know, and it's like just keeping, I think you said it so well, Shinova, like generate the energy internally. And then what I find is that if I can do that and like maintain that flow, people start to get into it. And then there's this like click where suddenly the comments are moving, people are chatting with me and each other. And there's like, and then it feels like I'm feeding off their energy and they're feeding off mine and we're working together on it. So yeah, thank you.
I think Ed Sheeran said it best. Learn how to think out loud. You have to say every single thing you think.
Thanks, Ed. Always given that solid advice, Mr. Ed Sheeran. Sofar alum, Ed Sheeran. Thanks, everybody. That's really fantastic answers and a lot of really great stuff there. Got a few more questions before we get into the more live Q&A. Wanted to actually send this one Matt's way from an industry and production standpoint. I think there's a lot of things changing in music discovery right now, especially now that we're all at home and we're all trying to figure out what the right platforms are for discovering new music. You know, new platforms are actually popping up day to day, or you know, organizations that would normally have live shows or venues are moving online, and so there's opportunities there to discover new music and, you know, learn who your next favorite band might be. But from your point of view, Matt, and then artists feel free to chime in as well. What steps does the industry need to take to support the move to virtual gigs? Right now, we see a lot of DIY in terms of people, you know, putting together lineups, posting it on Instagram or Facebook or wherever they might be, or, you know, promoting their own channels. But how can the industry support that move to virtual gigs? And should they be involved at all or just leave it to the artists?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can definitely argue from both ways. I do think that, you know, the industry in general has, you know, an obligation, you know, to make sure that when it comes to this format, I think one of the things that's been the most mushiest is, why do I do a live stream and what do I get out of it? When it's an artist that's doing it personally from their own account, you know, there's connections and there's things that, you know, can make a lot more sense for nurturing and growing your audience. It becomes a little more interesting, I think, when you're displaced one step as a brand. So what does that brand want to do? What does it make sense for them to do? Why should they connect with an audience? How should they connect? What is that experience for the audience? And then what is that experience for the artist? You know, I can quickly talk about what we've done recently with the listening room. And our approach was, you know, we found ourselves in a position where we're doing tons of shows a night, and overnight we basically had to stop that. And so for us, we had an existing platform that has a lot of subs, has a lot of leverage, and, you know, it's a place that we can enable artists to still broadcast from. So for us, it was trying to figure out, all right, what are our goals from live streaming? And that was making sure that we had a place that artists that were displaced in this current time still had a way to connect with our existing fan base and our audience. You know, having ways to donate and things like that, I think, are great ways to incentivize that as well. But that was what our exchange and hope was, I think, from the audience perspective. I think what we want to do from the artist perspective on that side is make sure that this is something that's easy to do for them and isn't another chore. You're going to have artists that have all kinds of equipment and accessibility, and the last thing you want to do is send them 5 different software links with different drivers that they have to do so you can remote access their computer and try to do setups and monitor. You know, I think you want to make sure you provide them with a way that lets them shine with what they have, regardless where they are, and make sure you align that to what you as a brand or a company, you know, have your internal goals are.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, would Nate or Shinova like to weigh in on that at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that comes to me just around, I think it's a lovely idea, like having the music industry support artists in doing something that I think is really awesome. Like, I think it's great if there is support for that. One of the things that immediately comes to my mind is a simple thing of, remember that it is live streaming, and make a way for that some of that interaction. I know it wouldn't be like the kind of live streams I'm used to, where it's like full interaction, but where some of that could be carried over. I just personally think it would be really cool to have some way of like that the artist still gets to hear from the audience, that they know that they're there and this is what they're saying and this is how they're feeling, and that there's like still that, because otherwise it is just playing to an empty room in a literal way. So anyway, that's the thought that came to me.
I do think it is an interesting idea, and I think it's probably going to happen. But you're talking, Zach, about or Matt, about brands and companies or events putting on these streams rather than just straight from the artist. And, you know, it to me does feel like it's a little less personalized, but it depends on what they're streaming and how. Like I've seen people doing the live streams of like, I mean, they did this even before of like an event, you know, and you're just like a fly on the wall watching this event live. To me, that's not my favorite, but like with what you guys are doing with Sofar and listen, but it's, sorry, now listen here, sorry.
It is
I'm
called
not,
Keep Listening.
keep listening, that's what it
And
is.
you can tune in every
I
week
need to start
live
listening,
streams
that's
on
what I
Sofar
need.
Sounds.
You're and I know that this is partly because of quarantine, but you're not just streaming an event, you're sending the stream to a personal artist. So I think that that's a really cool kind of loophole into having it be a brand, and that's how you're promoting it, but still keeping it personal and about the artist.
Cool, thanks, y'all. And I just wanted to cover really quickly, I know the two of you primarily perform solo, but there's a lot of bands right now that are all in their own separate spaces. You know, you've got quartets and quintets that are unable to perform in a live space together like they're so used to. And so they're looking for new ways to stream as well. And while I am a bit technology challenged in terms of how 4 people in 4 different spaces can come together and live stream in one way without it being a process of editing and production and putting together a video like all the cool ones we've been seeing coming up on YouTube. But I'm wondering, just more generally, what has your experience been collaborating with other artists through streaming, if at all? And how did these collaborations come about? You know, what did you discover or learn from trying to create music with someone else while still participating in somewhat of a live streaming environment, if at all?
Matt, I feel like you may have something to say about this.
I mean, for me, this is, you know, the pot at the end of the rainbow that I think a lot of folks are chasing right now, because there just really aren't great ways, you know, just besides just syncing up all the audio and video from all these different places and having it align in a central place is a bit of a technology nightmare. And, you know, it also, even in that best case scenario, I'm worried that it creates a weird experience, because I think as a performer, when you're in a place playing with other people, the energy that you respond from and what you get from is really hard when you have audio latencies and you don't get that same personal feeling being in the same room. I think when it comes to things of, you know, people in different places working together, there's a ton of great options. They're just not live ones. I mean, there's lots of really great, you know, collaborative DAW platforms that you can do, simple iOS apps that are really neat to collaborate. I have a couple buddies recently that have been using this one a cappella as more of like an funny art project thing, where each week we send each other a silly little video that we all get to add on. And it's, you know, the production stakes are super low on something like that, but it's super fun and meaningful. So it still gives us a chance to, you know, try to be creative, even though we're all locked in completely different states and different places. So, you know, I think from a live standpoint, it's hard, but you can get really meaningful content from still produced stuff remotely, I think.
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind was Machine Gun Kelly's been putting out covers with his friends. He had Travis Barker on, and it's just a split screen edit type thing. I love that. I think that's so cool. But like you're saying, doing that in a live stream version is really difficult. I imagine there'd be a way for one of the band members to be kind of the host of everything and, like, say, go through OBS or something, have everybody come in through the one thing, and then that person sends it to the rest of the world. I'm not sure. I really don't know if there's a perfect answer to this. I haven't experimented with it enough yet. There's this one band called Halo Scene or Hollow Scene on Twitch. They are a 3-piece band, but they're in the same room. So their in-ears, they're doing the same thing. Even though they do the split screen thing, they're still in the same room. But you could do it like in the house in different rooms with split screens. Like that could maybe be something cool and still quarantine friendly. But there's also things like Twitch Sings, where you can, like, or it's kind of like a TikTok duets, where you can do, yeah, collaborative things in a more I guess it's already kind of a constructed thing. You know, Twitch Sings is kind of like karaoke, and You can bring someone else on and you can sing karaoke with them, basically. So there are things like that that you can still bring in multiple people and do fun things that are a little unorthodox.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to this. I've really been a solo artist kind of forever, and the only collaborative stuff, it's the issue is latency. The problem is that if two people are not in the same room and they're both live streaming and coming on together, I've never experienced it lining up, and then you start like one person that you think you're hearing at the thing and you're singing on time, but then everyone else is hearing horrific stuff. So from that perspective, I mean, yeah, I think what you said, if there's bands in quarantine together, then all just get together and set up, like I would say on a practical standpoint, and even going forward, I think live streaming is awesome. So just as a forward thinking thing, once you can get the band together again, like set it up so that the front man or the front person is kind of the one who's maybe interacting the most with the live stream, but then have the band there instead. It can still be very simple. It can still be just on Facebook Live without any big gear, and like your audience might really enjoy seeing like the band practice, like what's the room you practice in and how does everyone hang out there and just play music together. So, but yeah, right now in terms of quarantine, I don't know of any good live solutions that could help with that.
And that's okay. That's why we have these discussions, Nate. We're going to figure it out together. And if you think of anything, feel free to email me and I'll email the masses. So we're all good. We're going to move on to the Q&A section. We've got a few questions in the queue. If anybody would like to submit a question, again, there's that little Q&A button there at the bottom. Feel free to type in your question. We'll filter them out. If you have similar questions, we may not get to every single one individually, but I'll try and blend a few together. So in the next 15 minutes, we can just cover the ground. And there's a lot of really great stuff here. So one thing that we didn't cover off on, and Shinova, you touched on this a little bit earlier, not that you have to start answering the question, but just wanted to mention that you had said Twitch, your fans on Twitch helped you go on a tour, you know, and that kind of support I think is really crucial to artists right now that are looking to live stream, whether, you know, once we're through this, going on tour is a goal, or new equipment is a goal, or just right now paying rent might be a goal, you know, paying your bills might be a goal, and our art is a good way for us to work at earning a living now through live streaming. And so we have a few questions coming in that I might just try to blend together a little bit here. So forgive me for if they're a little long, but Riley had asked, you know, have you found that promoting a live stream in advance is as much as you would in a normal show, is as effective as doing pop-up live streams? And that kind of ties into another question that we have here from Mark asking, how often do you go live? So what is the promotional aspect of promoting your live streams, and how does that relate to the consistency of how often you actually pop up on your selected channels, or how often you go live in general?
Yeah, I think I could even do better at this than I do. I don't do a lot of promotion. Like 5 to 10 minutes before I go on, I'll tweet, put a little on story, I'm live, guys, you know, and then obviously my followers on Twitch get a notification that I just went live, anybody that follows me. So I don't do too much promotion. And another aspect of Twitch specifically, I don't know about the others. I am really interested to try. But there's like categories, and people will just, more than half of my audience on a daily basis is people just randomly discovering me in the music category. I get a certain amount of follower or viewers, and it brings me up, you know, like I used to be down in the aisle 40, but like now I'm like top 2, sometimes first row in the category. So a lot of new people find me that way, which is why I don't promote perfectly all the time. I do stream every other day to every 2 days. But I had really good advice given to me by a streamer that I got to meet and collab with on Twitch, that won Twitch Sings competition, actually. She goes by Mermaid Unicorn on Twitch, and she was like, it's not about how much you stream, it's about how long. And specifically with Twitch, the longer you stay on, the longer or the more people are going to discover you. There's more time in which people could accidentally stumble upon you in the category. So she was recommending at least 4-hour streams. I do 4 to 6, 7-hour streams easily. And I know that sounds like a lot, But I produce on there, I write on there, I'm chatting half the time, you know, I do performances in between. So there's a lot that you can do with that time, but for me on Twitch, time is key rather than how often. But I say switching it up. You know, I do IG live little streams too in there, and those can be short. I think those can be 20, 30 minutes. That's totally fine. So it depends on the platform, I think.
That's so interesting. I didn't actually know that about Twitch. That's like, to me, the thought of live streaming for 4 to 6 hours is like, that's intimidating, very intimidating. But
you would get
yeah,
it. You would totally get it. It's
Yeah.
not as hard as it seems, because you're just literally being you, and your audience is sending them back. I don't know. It's very,
cool.
It's easier than I thought it was. I did a 12-hour stream. I do that regularly. So I don't know, maybe I'm weird.
No, I get it. I hear, especially when you say about like the producing and songwriting, and I kind of just being there, having the experience. I really get that. So for me, one of the things that I am not as good at as I should be, and that's in actually all areas of my life, little admission there, is consistency. And consistency with everything is what matters. Consistency with live streaming matters. So I would say if you're gonna do live streaming as something you really want to explore and like give a go, do it, commit to some kind of regularity, whether that's like I'm going live on the same day at the same time every week, or I'm just going to live several times a week and it's going to be random. But like start really showing up. And what I find is that when I do that, is that as soon as I stop, within a few days, people are just like, hey, where are you? We're like, I was hoping you'd be online sometime soon. So if I don't really, I am doing these, this is a very recent thing. I'm using a platform called Crowdcast, which is specifically built. It's not really, so it's not anything else other than a live streaming platform. And it's used primarily, I think, for like business webinars, kind of things like that. But it is my favorite of the platforms. The challenge with it is it doesn't have that much of a built-in audience. So you can take people from your other platforms there, but when they are there, when someone signs up, we get access to their emails and their names, and it's really just creating like the most direct relationship to the people who come and watch my live streams. But like, I get to know who they are and I get to talk to them directly, and there's no one else trying to sell them anything in between, and which is pretty epic. And so with those, I'm doing them every Sunday at the same time. And those I am promoting a little more because I have to promote them on my other social media platforms. So I try to make each one have a certain theme, and then I'm just still exploring and experimenting with it. So for that, I do more promoting. But like you said, like really just going live consistently, so that on whatever platform you choose, so that your audience knows that you go live consistently on that platform. And then they're kind of expecting it. And so whenever it is, they'll be like, oh, sweet, they're live, and they know they kind of want to be a part of it. And so, yeah, I guess that answers the question, I think.
Thanks all. Yeah, Matt, did you have anything to add before we have a few more questions here to wrap up, but I'd love any additional insight.
Fully agree with both points. I mean, I think this comes back to the earlier point about it. You know, it comes down to where your audience is. You know, for us as a brand with a platform, you know, we go live on YouTube each day and we still promote externally. And, you know, we see different benefit from that, but the difference between those efforts and then what we see actually within YouTube, you know, that platform, just with the notifications that people get 30 minutes before we're live when we're pre-scheduled and things like that, you know, those are things you don't really have to do, and the platform's taking care of it for you to make sure those people exist. So, you know, I think that's helpful, and, you know, it's given us a little more time to then see if we can use other platforms as a way to try to funnel people into.
One thing to add to this, I think it's awesome that you can do it every Tuesday and Thursday or whatever the freak. stick to that. I could not stick to a schedule. Maybe it's just the ADHD, like, girl in me, I don't know, but like, I just go on whenever the freak I want to go on. It was way too stressful. It's like, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock, I'm late. Blah! You know, like I just would freak out and stress everything out, and I'd be on stream and I'm already pissed off. And so for me, just going on whenever the freak I want to go on works best for me. And that's usually, every other day, every 2 days. Sometimes I'll go 3 days, but then I just feel, okay, I got to stream now. Also, I didn't talk about the money side of it at all, how I make the living thing.
That was actually my next question too, if I could tee you up. real quick? We
Yes,
got a couple
please
of
go
questions coming
ahead.
in.
I kind of did,
So
and I thought I ignored you.
no worries. No, we're going to blend it right in here to wrap up here. The thing on everybody's mind, how do we make money doing this? How do we do this, from a personal standpoint, artistically, and also from a business standpoint too, Matt? I'd love your perspective, from the industry side of things around how, Sofar has been approaching supporting acts through live streaming and the like, but we can touch on that as well. Basically, the questions coming through here, one of them Lauren actually sent a question. She said, how do you suggest monetizing live streams? Are there platforms for that specifically? We see a lot of people that add their Venmo or PayPal info asking for donations. And then to add on to that too, in addition to just donations and monetizing your own live streams, what are your thoughts on ticketing live streams during this time, or ways to receive donations outside of just standard Venmo and PayPal, which we see so commonly on little signs behind the people performing in their live streams?
Yeah, I would personally love to hear what Nate and Shinova have to say here. I'm more than happy to talk about what we're doing at the end, but I think they're definitely going to have some really great insight here.
Tight.
Okay, I'll start then. And I was so glad this was I was like, we haven't covered this thing. It's really important. So for me, my primary source of income is Patreon. And just in case anyone doesn't know, Patreon membership platform, people become your patrons. They pledge for as long or as short as they like, small or large pledges. And that's how I make a lot of my income. So for me, I'm always thinking of like, how can I inspire people to feel enough joy and excitement about what I'm doing to want to become a patron. So I that's part of the Crowdcast thing, is that Crowdcast integrates very well with Patreon. So I can create patron only live streams that they'll go and click like let me in or the sign up button, and it'll say please sign in with your Patreon, and then that's how they'll get access, which is fantastic. The way that I make like the most kind of money as it's rolling is actually from donations, from what I saw someone else calling it as a virtual tip jar. And so I've set up using a plugin on WordPress. The plugin is called GiveWP, and I love them. I think they're great. It's a little more technically complicated than some of the other options, but it again gives me full control. It's on my website, and I just have my link like nate.live/tip. And so it's very easy for me to say. It's a short link. So when I'm on a live stream, it's very easy to just be like, hey guys, if you're loving this and you want to offer something in return, you want to offer an exchange, then best place to go is nate.live/tip, or become one of the natives on Patreon, nate.live/tribe. It's very quick. It's very easy for me to say. And I can also incentivize it by saying, like, if you do become a patron, you get downloads of a lot of my songs, those kind of things. What I found very interesting, because at first when I thought, well, I'm on Patreon, so I don't want to create a tip jar, because then that's like sending people to two different places. But I found a lot of my patrons tip on my live streams, which is they're pledging like $5 a month, but then on a live stream, they'll be tipping whatever it is that they choose at that time. And they seem to work very well together. There are some simpler solutions. There's one, buymeacoffee.com, I think it's called. And you can very easily set up there to have a virtual tip jar. I personally recommend against a paypal.me link, because the only way that people can use that is if they have PayPal. And yes, a lot of people have PayPal, but yes, a lot of people don't as well. And so making it kind of as broad as possible where people can use cards or whatever it is, seems sensible to me. If it is a platform that allows commenting with like active links, it's like Facebook, for example. If I'm on Facebook Live, I'll try either myself or one of my people who like comes to a lot of live streams will comment with nate.live/tip, so that people can just click that quickly and go to the tip jar, which is great. And yeah, also another really good way, there's a woman called Claire Means who has made a career on Periscope. She was a professional long-term busker. She busked every day somewhere in LA for many years, and at some point decided to just put her phone there and start Periscoping while she would busk for the few hours she did it. And she now makes really nice income from her audience. They buy her CDs, they take her on tours. There's like all that kind of stuff happens there. Same with Dawn Beyer. She was a Nashville country musician who started going live on Facebook Live. And this is public information, so I can share, but she made, I think, $75,000 in her first year live streaming on Facebook, just from tip jar and from people starting to buy her albums, and then people starting to book her to go on like play private shows and tours and things like that. So those are some of the things.
Thanks, Nate. Looks like we lost Shinova, unfortunately. We'll see if she can sign
I'm
back in
hoping
here.
her
Oh,
camera
she's back.
arrived.
She's back. We're all good. Cool. Nova, did you want to wrap things up by sharing your experience too? And then
Yeah,
we can...
there's so much to talk about this. It's a whole thing. This actually is why I started on Twitch. I feel this platform, even though I do really want to learn more about Patreon, and you sound like you're killing it. So I've been terrible with keeping that up. Twitch has a lot of avenues of where you can make income. It has bits, which are like gifts. It has the tipping, which goes through an already integrated thing that then takes you to your PayPal or whatever you want to use. Subbing, you make like $5 a month. I think you split that with Twitch, but on each person that subscribes to you, there's just many avenues of revenue on Twitch. Then with IG, you wouldn't have something like that. I know YouTube has donations, but they don't have bits, and obviously you can sub to someone for free. So for me, I kind of picked Twitch because there's a bigger playing field in which you can receive contributions. Yeah, but like you saying with the Patreon thing is very cool. The sub thing, having sub-only streams. I've never done this. Sorry, I just had to run out the door to get this package. So I'm like completely out of breath now. And I'm very excited. So having a sub-only stream, I've never done. I kind of have, I don't know if you guys know who Gary Vee is. He's kind of like a YouTube entrepreneurial guy. He says, give your best ish away for free. And I live by that. I love that. And even though you got to make a living, and I strategize and I try to think of the best ways as a musician to make money, specifically with live streaming and online. I know that it can make an audience feel more special and give incentive to sub, but at the same time, I would never tell someone that they couldn't come to my show. And I understand ticketing then is kind of an argument. And again, I just want people to come. I don't want to give any resistance between them coming and not coming to see me. So that's kind of my strategy on that. And then finding ways for people to support. I think that's the main ideology around all of this, is people want to support and contribute and donate, if you will, to help support you and have you move forward. I think that is where people mostly come from when they want to donate. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing so much. This flew by. I'm afraid we're at the end of our time, but it's just been an absolute joy to have you all here. Thank you to everybody who attended. One last question that came in really quickly. I'm just going to address it. Craig had asked, what is Sofar doing to help the communities affected during this time? And there's plenty of things that we've got rolling out that we're really excited about. Some fundraising opportunities. Our Global Artist Fund, going completely to our artists. We're trying to raise $250,000 to donate to our artists, and in the process of doing that right now. More to come on that soon. In addition to our listening room, Keep Listening, which Santiago has played a huge role in all of the production aspects of that. So please tune in for that, and I'll include all of this information, what Sofar is doing, as well as some helpful links to Shinova's YouTube tutorial videos, where you can follow Nate and how you can learn more about the projects that they have going on, as well as what Sofar's going on. We'll include that in the follow-up email to everybody who attended. But just wanted to give a quick, remote round of applause to our panelists this evening or this afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Thank you all so much for joining me. And thank you all to everybody who attended. We'll have more webinar events coming up soon. Really excited. Next week, it'll be all around the topic of playlisting, digital playlisting, and the strategies behind getting playlisted. Another thing that artists right now are really craving, really interested in learning more about. So we've got a few panelists joining us next week. Look out for more information on that, and then follow that email for my personal contact information. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer any additional questions or get those questions into the hands of the professionals here with me that can answer them best. So thank you all again, and hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it, y'all.
Thank you, you too. Bye, chat. Thank you for saying thank you. See
Bye,
you
chat.
all.
Bye, panelists. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.